to Focus today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and I always enjoy and honor to have with us Ken LaCorte. He's formerly an executive with Fox News, but then all of a sudden he woke up one day and got out of there. And he's down in the Bay Area now, and he's also the host of Elephants in the Room podcast. It's a great podcast, and that is also, you can go to youtube.com/@elephantsinrooms, right there, elephantsinrooms.com. There at YouTube. And then, of course, his personal website, kenlacorte.substack.com. And there's a picture of the landing page of that. So much to talk to. Brother Ken, good to see you, friend. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. I hope you got some good fried sushi over the Christmas holidays.
With a little seaweed wrapped around it.
We're going to have chocolate broccoli next.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, why not? Why not? Good to see you, buddy. Merry Christmas and almost Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Well, we certainly recognize the passing of the 39th President, Jimmy Carter, yesterday. Quite the guy in so many ways. How would you, in a short term, I guess, maybe define his presidency?
You know, I think he was actually the right man at the right time in America. I mean, this was after the drama and trauma of Watergate. Ford came in and the pardon, and Ford was kind of a placeholder president. I think he was still getting some of the blowback from Nixon and that whole stuff. And you know, Carter came in promising honesty and openness, and I think that he delivered that. He was a kind of a weak president, and I think that was his undoing. But I think that he had a high standards of decency and of who he was. I think we saw that as much after he was president as we did before, where he didn't go around doing a lot of political things. He spent most of his life building homes for people, and building low-income homes and for people who needed them. So I think that he's somebody that we should remember fondly, even though from a hardcore political aspect, I wouldn't rank him as one of the top presidents. I think he brought a lot to it.
Okay, he did have some accomplishments. The peace agreement between Israel and Egypt was fairly significant at the time.
It was.
But the hostage things, what a blow, especially on Inauguration Day.
The hostage thing, the energy thing, just the kind of, he was a very, very nice guy. And I think, as we've just learned in America, sometimes being the nicest guy in the room doesn't necessarily mean you'll be the best president. We're at the opposite. In many ways, he's like the opposite Donald Trump, right? I mean, Donald Trump is a strong leader, has a strong sense of where to go. You count your change maybe sometimes, and he says crazy things, whereas Jimmy Carter was almost the opposite in so many ways.
Do you recall the flavor or the tone of the campaign that got him elected?
I was 11, so I don't recall it all that. But I remember he flashed the big smile. It was, "I'll never lie to you." He was actually the first kind of exercise in recent history of Christian churches getting behind him. I mean, the Christian right kind of came to, they didn't call it that then, but it kind of came to fruition under Jimmy Carter. He was somebody that a lot of people were saying, look, the problem in government right now is morality, not necessarily policy. And the churches got behind him. Now, that in a very real sense, much of Christianity that I remember, including Pentecostal. And then that was something that morphed into and turned into, well, we're also going to have the policies behind what we think is in line with our faith, and Reagan kind of was the beneficiary of that, and Republicans have been certainly with a big strong element of Christianity really ever since up to today.
Well, I was just reflecting earlier, this next week or so is going to be pretty interesting in America. We're probably going to have a state funeral, obviously, for the late president. Mixed into that will be January 3rd, the election of a speaker, if that doesn't spill over into January 6th, which is going to be the solidifying of the Electoral College. So let's kind of pull this apart. Do you think Johnson gets reelected?
I think he does. It doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like that kind of hardcore conservative group of 20 or 30 is making all that many. They're going to flex their muscle in some points. I don't think that they'll try this kind of rebellion again, if for no other reason than I think Donald Trump would make them pay for it, and I think they understand that deep down.
That was kind of my next thought. Do you think the president-elect's on the phone to those who might be wandering off into the weeds here and say, hey, get in line?
Either that or he just tweets. I was shocked to read his. Did you read his tweet about Jimmy Carter? Every time there's something like that, I read it and I hold my breath, waiting for the but. And it was very nice. It was everything you would hope it would be for somebody wishing a president's passing on that, yeah. And it was good to see that. I think I've been following the president's, we call them tweets, even though it's on Truth Social. Yeah. He's still going to keep his. He's not had a transformation in the sense that he's going to be a tough Jimmy Carter. He has toned down some of a little bit of his edge on some of those things, but he also he's sticking with the theme that brought him, which is he is the kind of in charge guy who is unpredictable and says things that makes your eyes pop open. I was reading one of the biographies of one of the insiders, and they said that when Trump came up to him once, he said, "You know what the secret to a good tweet is?" He said, "Just enough crazy." And I think that he understands it. I think Trump would rather be disliked than be boring. And but we're also seeing a very different Trump. I mean, compare this to 8 years ago, where he was, we were still saying, wow, Donald Trump won, and he was scrambling and didn't really know who to put into what, and there was no kind of, there was a lot of understandable unorganization in that. The Republican Party and the insiders in D.C. disliked him as much as the Democrats did, and he kind of came in and cobbled that administration together. This is very, very different. I've been almost without exception, and with one or two exceptions, overwhelmingly positively surprised and pleased by the people that he's putting in and the policies that you can tell that he and others have been working on for the past year. And I think that starting on the 21st, we're going to see a lot of action on that.
Yeah, I say this carefully, but to him to lose to Biden for 4 years and then to go back and have a second term is somewhat providential. Had he won the second term and beaten Biden, he still would have had the same cabinet and all of the mushiness of that. Instead, he comes in and goes, nope, I'm starting clean. All of these bureaucrats are off to the side. I'm going with people that nobody knows. Pretty shocking.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time that I've been this optimistic about an incoming presidency. Now, the world changes. The world throws surprises at presidents, but. Yeah, no, I'm feeling very, very good about it on a number of fronts.
Ken, some of this almost looks like it's got a global spillover. Look what's happening up in Canada. Look what's happening in France. Look what's happening in Germany. The people are rising up and saying, you know what? If the people of America can take America back, maybe we ought to take our country back. What's your take on that?
I think that the elites, and it's, I don't mean that as a pejorative term. I mean, you and I are elites. I mean by any definition of that. But in general, I think that the people who were running their countries, and that's both the elected officials and the bureaucracy class and the media class, I think that their values diverged enough from the average person in their countries. And I think, you think of the illegal immigration thing that's been going. Who wanted that? There wasn't, there wasn't 20% of Americans who thought, hey, let's just open up the borders and let 5 million people walk in over 4 years, or whatever those numbers are that we still don't know. In France, same thing. There are neighborhoods you can't recognize in France. Although, in fairness, I went to Paris a couple weeks ago. If you just look at it on Twitter, it looks horrible. It's still pretty beautiful in 99% of the place. I didn't see anything bad there. So I think that globally, and it's both a media thing and a leader thing. It feels like the ruling class got a little too high in their horse and diverged from the things that their country needed and that their country wanted. And these are corrections going on from here to all over that. It's a good point.
Some have said that it's not totally fatal, but the DNC is knocked down pretty hard. I don't care who they put up, what personality, what name, it's not going anywhere because their policies is what lost here. Do you think that's true?
You know, I think it was both. I mean, you know, clearly she was a horrific candidate. They you know, the party of democracy, or at least that talked about it for a long time, decided to set democracy aside and select somebody that wasn't a good choice. So there was that. But if the Democrats had been, but you know, Trump brings some baggage too, and if the Democrats were 20-30% better on some of their issues, and you know, it was clearly on who wants this kind of illegal immigration? No one. Who wants this crazy DEI stuff and the transgender stuff? A very small minority of Americans wanted that to happen. You look at what they were doing with you know, their policies on crime, which under the guise of, wow, everybody going to jail, it must be racism, just decided to stop sending people to jail, including the 1% of criminals who do 80% of the crime, and the inner core of cities where, you know, you can't walk through them in many places. So no, they have to get their race and sex stuff kind of figured out. And you know, there is no one person who is going to solve it for them. I mean, we often think of a small star chamber of the behind the scenes, and there's some very powerful people, but I think that over the next 2 years they're going to have they're still going to go through their debate, and we'll see if saner if the people who are, I mean, there was a Democratic congressman who right afterwards had flipped on the trans script. Yeah, I like that. On the transgender script, where he was like, you know, I just don't want my daughter getting beat up on the playing field by a biological man, and I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. And the day before the election, he was afraid to say that because he never did. And so if some of those more moderate and smarter voices take heed and stop playing the inside game that drifted them away from their own population and their own party. You know, I saw a picture, Perry, of it was Elon Musk, Donald Trump, there was Kennedy, and there was somebody else, and who's in the administration. Oh, I guess it was Tulsi Gabbard. And I was like, they were all Democrats not all that long ago.
You're right.
That says something about the party that kind of shifted away to the left and left enough people that they lost the House, the Senate, the presidency, the Supreme Court. You know, they've got some making up to do.
So I kind of boil it down to three things that kind of swung the pendulum. One was CRT, that hit the wall. Defund the police hit the wall. And transgenderism hit the wall, primarily boys and girls locker room. All of that pretty much hit the wall with common Americans. And I would assume it's dead. I mean, I don't see them trying to keep this alive.
Well, it's a big they. I mean, certainly there's an element of it that will keep fighting this and keep doing this. They're certainly on defense on all of this. From the San Jose, the biggest flashpoint was the San Jose volleyball team where they had a transgender player, and you know, he was spiking the ball 60 miles an hour. But what you saw, you didn't see a short time ago, was some of the other players speaking up, some of the other schools and the other players on the other teams saying, we don't want to be part of this. We're just going to let them win. So they're definitely, you know, we've seen it so many times on so many things, the cycle of politics. Well, crime, transgender, DEI, all of that, I think, has hit its peak in the short term. Trump will undo a good chunk of it, and I think that other local politicians and some national politicians on both sides understand that now and are going to moderate it.
Okay.
And you know, does it disappear? Probably not. Does it? But they're definitely on the defense, and it'll be lessening, and that's just good news for everybody.
All right, let me take a quick break. Always a joy to have with us Ken LaCorte. Check out a couple of places. His podcast is a must listen to. Elephants in Rooms is the podcast there at youtube.com/. at Elephants in Rooms. And then his personal website is kenlacorte.substack.com, the Substack connection there. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our buddy Ken LaCorte's with us today, former executive at Fox News, and now he's the host of Elephants in Rooms podcast, which is a must listen to. And you can go to youtube.com/@elephantsinrooms. And then Substack place is kenlacorte.substack.com. Ken, I'm scratching my head here. I mean, the trolling by the president-elect at times is not only amazing, it's just quite humorous, if not shocking. I mean, it kind of runs you through all the roller coasters here. But Canada, Greenland, and Panama. Okay, now, what do we do here? First of all, Panama. Can we, as far as you know, can he take it back?
You know, I haven't read the fine print in things. It's always a mistake to take him too literally, and it's always a mistake to not take him seriously.
Yeah.
And so you have to both say what's going on. And, I mean, because he can say something like that and make things happen. I will never forget when Iran was doing something stupid under his. He said, you know, we might just take out their mosques, or he was talking about some of their like ancient mosques, which of course set D.C. and it's, you know, it's violating the Geneva's Convention, and oh my God, blah 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 blah. But they took it kind of seriously, and it moderated their behavior with a tweet. Remember when the North Korean kid was the North Korean dictator was rattling his thing, and Trump sent out a tweet that could have been written by a 7-year-old. In fact, somebody reprinted it in crayon, and it looked like it was. He was like, I don't know why. I thought we could be good friends. I don't know why he called me old. I would never call him fat. And then he had a secondary thing about how it's like, you know, he talks about a red button. Well, I have a bigger one and mine works. So all of the guys in the State Department were literally throwing up in their office trash cans when they read that, because that's not how presidents act. But I'll never forget when Kim Jong-un came back later, and they wanted some agreement with the United States. I think we signed a nice thing. And their first top of their point was that the United States wouldn't nuclear bomb them. And I was like, who on earth would want to bomb North Korea? It's like bombing the desert. But it told me that Trump understands people. He understands that guy, and the guy was actually nervous from that. So you know, I don't know whether he has the power to take back Panama Canal, but if he is trying to get the like crazy high fees or too much China influence, if he's trying to get that stuff done, it might just bring them to the table in a way that you know, 50 seconds of him typing out a tweet is overwhelmingly there. So I don't know the underlying stuff on it, but I know that he understands people enough that he knows how to put pressure on them in the right way, and he does it through public ways like that.
Yeah, I understand that, because if you read The Art of the Deal, you get towards the end of the book, you kind of understand he throws way out past where he wants to go, and he settles somewhere in the middle. But the Panama Canal thing is so interesting to me, because I don't think any of us knew that China was running one end of it and promising the world to all those Panamanians down there by building a $1 billion bridge and all the stuff that goes with it. So I'm on a quest to find out, is the treaty or the sales agreement, has it been breached?
You know, I don't know. That's a good question. I think when you have a big enough Navy, you get to define things a little bit different than the Panamanians.
Yeah. So all right. So let's go over to Greenland. Can you tell me what his interest in Greenland is, other than maybe military strategy?
I think it's military. I think that they have a lot of natural resources. I mean, one of the things that were, and I haven't followed this all that closely in fairness, one of the things that is an issue as we gin up, as we start to separate our economy a little bit from China, and I think that that's something that the president wants. I think that's something that we all realized in the you know, during COVID. It's like, first of all, not only did you start that over there, okay, that's a whole separate conversation, but the fact that so much of our medical, the from the PPE to the masks were made in China, and we didn't have the ability to get them over here. And we learned, I think, a lot in that. And one of the things right now that China is going to play hardball, and one of the few things that they have that we really need still, even though we're discovering more parts of it, are these high-end metals that are necessity in building silicon chips and a lot of our military things. You've heard about the debate on that. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be so how much Greenland plays into that, I'm not sure. It's interesting that all three of those, though, were from, making Canada the 51st state to Panama to Greenland. It was the theme of that is American expansion. And when's the last time you've heard a leader of the United States even float the notion of maybe America should be a bigger country? I mean, we had that concept all throughout the 1800s and early 1900s of taking over the whole north. They didn't stop at the 13 colonies and say, all right, well that's it, we're done. And now we have a president who's at least floating the notion and bringing up the concept that maybe America should be a bigger country and a more, on one hand, he's preaching a little bit of isolation. He wants to use the military less. He wants to do America first. He wants to do some less of that. But he's also there's a little bit of point of pride in the, maybe Canada would make an extra good state or two up there. So I think that there's something PR-wise into it all for him. It's kind of like with Kennedy talking about going to the moon and back. It's a big challenge. We can be greater than we are, perhaps. And so I think some of that's going into it. I mean, we got a lot more problems in Greenland, of course, but it's an interesting point of pride to be like, well, let's put this on the table.
This is so fascinating because I've had several people on lately also that are pretty savvy what's going on in Canada, and they pretty much feel that Trudeau's days are numbered. He's so unpopular now, and his equivalent to the vice president has resigned. Trump trolls and says, why don't you become governor of a 51st state? And then he said, well, let's put Gretzky up there. He'll win and doesn't have to spend any money. I mean, this is all Trumpism at its best. But Trudeau is further weakened. The Canadians are liking the idea of all this stuff. In other words, they don't like him, but they like anything that could be against him. Does he survive much longer?
Gosh, I hope not. He has been he's a good-looking guy who does a lot of authoritarian things that if I lived in Canada I wouldn't be happy about. I don't, so I don't really care all that much. But it's certainly making. I mean, look, and Trump. This is punishing him. This is punishing Trudeau. I mean, the fact that even if 90% of Canadians are rolling their eyes saying we're not going to become a state of the United States, the fact that that's even a point, that's even a talking point, has to hurt the current ruler of Canada. Could you imagine? I mean, could you imagine if the conversation was really, well, maybe we let China take over or whatever that equivalent might be. It's hard to imagine that with the United States, or it's hard to even play in that analogy. But that just that weakened Trudeau in the eyes of the world and certainly of Canadians. So he's on the edge. He's fighting for it, and that might have been we'll see in retrospect. Maybe that was the little push that created a bit of an avalanche.
Well, again, this is so amazing to me. Some people up there said he'll be out by Valentine's Day. I don't know, but I guess the other part of it is since his equivalent to vice president, which I think is the Minister of Finance, has resigned and stepped aside, that if he does resign, that it's not as matter he reaches back and somebody else becomes prime minister. It might throw the country into a full-blown election. Do you know if that's how parliamentary rule works?
I will admit some of my Canadian political shortcomings here. In most parliamentary systems, the whole concept of that is yes, the parliament comes into it and they select the leader of it. That's certainly how it works in Britain, which is why when they step down, you have another snap election and some things like that. So I guess, but I don't want to be fake news.
Okay, that's fine. And in the meantime, Farage is popping up in the UK, and he's going to go from 5 to 72 seats. I mean, that shakes Parliament up over there. What do you think's happening?
I think it's the same thing we talked elsewhere. It's people are flexing their muscle at the ballot box, and that's what they're supposed to do.
Okay. Hey, buddy, good to see you. How's your podcast going?
Oh, it's going very well. To talk about fun things, and I'll be talking about that UFO and UAP. What's going on in New Jersey is the next one, which is a weird instance of half complete hysteria, but at the underlying of it is we have a lot of serious level drones that for years have been incurring and flying over and hovering near our military installations, our nuclear power plants, and other things. There's a serious problem underlying it, although 98% of the stuff you see on TV is people pointing at stars and freaking out, and the news media being like, wow, that helicopter certainly looks like a drone. So it's an interesting thing that we'll keep an eye on.
But it does leave a legitimate question. What is it, and why don't we know?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I wouldn't be surprised if the military does have a very good idea, and whether it's China, China's really China is actually a leader in drone technology, and so some of that certainly feels like, I mean, we've had instances of where we were 50 miles off the coast and swarms of drones would be flying around our ships and coming up and flying virtually over our battleships. I mean, this is a so best case scenario is it's us and one part of the government is seriously testing the other, but a likely scenario is it's China with it's the China balloon all over again, but they're doing it with drones.
So it's not Pizza Hut trying to make a delivery?
Not yet.
'Tis the season. Hey, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for your time. Let's stay connected. Should be a fun year with a lot of things to talk about.
I'm actually happy and looking forward to it, and I always love being here.
All right, thanks man. See you around.
Bye-bye.